Hello, students. Welcome to your first online lecture for the stress management class. Please bear with me today. This is maybe only the second screen over that I've done, and I might bumble my way through it a little bit. So hang in there with me. Um, First of all, I'd kind of like to let you know where we're going to be going in the class and with this what's coming up section, uh, these notes right here with regard to exam 2. I wanted to let you know in advance that I am going to try to stay with what was originally planned in terms of the number of exams and what the coverage will be. However, I'll be more than willing to make adjustments along the way if I find out it's just not going to be possible. However, I do feel like we'll be able to pull off exam 2 in the same fashion. So your second exam in this class is a 50 question multiple choice test, and it will cover the three new sections: stress in the body, the second, stress portrait of a killer. That is actually a documentary, but there will be questions on the upcoming tests that are related to the documentary. And then the third section is called the stress emotions, which I think is a very cool section. We actually get into talking about anger and fear and how we actually are coping with those emotions. So that is the plan, uh, in terms of coverage before our second exam. Now, I wanted to let you know also that I've left my WordPress site up and running. You have the same access to that site that you've had in the past, but I will be posting all PowerPoints that we use um, into Canvas as we go. So you don't need to worry about going to the WordPress site unless you just want to. You could access all PowerPoints now if you wanted to, but I'll be posting them also as we go. So, today's lecture is going to be an intro to stress and the body, how stress potentially impacts our physical health. Okay. And next week, one of the things that we'll be doing is watching a documentary. And this documentary also is really addressing how stress can potentially impact our body in a negative way. And I think you'll like this documentary. I've used it in stress management class for some time now. And fortunately, someone grabbed it and has put it on YouTube. So we'll still be able to watch that documentary. So let's go ahead and get moving. I'm going to go ahead and flip this over into slideshow presentation. Hopefully that'll all go smoothly. And let's do this. So yeah, this section is on how stress can potentially impact our physical well-being. And I have a hunch some of you could be experiencing a bit of that right now. Um, I know personally, stress has been impacting my physical well-being this week. Um, in several respects. One is that I'm just extremely tired. And, I'm also noticing some little things physically that sometimes show up for me that I just know there are physical symptoms that sometimes come up as a result of stress. And I like to think about it in this way: when those symptoms appear, whether they're headaches, being very exhausted and tired, um, or it could be backaches. It's different for different people. I always think about that as my body actually trying to communicate with me, or that my body is talking to me and telling me that I probably need to adjust, to slow down, maybe to reduce my load somehow, take something off of my plate. And so, hopefully within this chapter, you're going to gain some knowledge about how this actually happens, but also get to know yourself a bit better. And, extending that into maybe how to care for yourself a bit better when we're going through periods of higher stress, which, I think for a lot of us that might be right now. So, some statistics to begin with, and these are pretty interesting. The first, more than 80% of patients' visits to physicians' offices are associated with stress. And what that statistic means is that over three-fourths of the people who are going to the doctor, stress is somehow in the mix. They may be going to the doctor because they're having gastrointestinal problems, but those gastrointestinal problems um, may have some connection to ineffective management of stress or inability to cope with stress. So that's a really high percentage. And then the second statistic, about 80% of workers' compensation claims are directly related to stress. And what that's referring to is, workers' compensation. Well, it's compensation or pay that workers get when they have to take time off work. And what the statistic is saying is about 80% of the time that individuals are taking time off work, there is a stress connection. So, these are really pretty shocking statistics. And, as we get going, something that's really important to know, and oh my gosh, as I'm going through this, I don't know if there could be a more timely point to be talking about stress management. But stress has the potential to aggravate a number of health conditions. So, and I have a hunch, some of you are very aware of this. I hope you are, but if you do have any underlying health conditions, for example, type 2 diabetes, eczema, you could also toss in there psoriasis. Eczema and psoriasis are both skin conditions, dry, flaky skin. Um, it can appear kind of any place on the body. I know I have a sibling who has horrible challenges with psoriasis. And when she is experiencing stress, it does tend to aggravate or make worse her condition. Also, if you have a condition like rheumatoid arthritis, yeah, stress, can really aggravate that condition or make it worse. I think it's safe to say that no matter what your health challenge might be, there is the potential for stress to only make it worse. So it becomes doubly important for those of us who have health conditions to be able to somehow control our stressors, manage our stress, and listen to our bodies and know when we need to make adjustments. Some other stress related health challenges. Now, these are just connections, that I want you to begin thinking about. Lupus, fibromyalgia, Epstein-Barr virus, those are all autoimmune related conditions, and in general, they are chronic, long-term health challenges. And there is definitely a stress connection with those. The common cold, you could just think any infectious disease. Think COVID-19, what we're going through right now. Um, you know, Bottom line is stress, especially if it's chronic stress, long-term stress, tends to suppress um, the the functioning of the immune system, and so it can leave us in a situation where we're much more susceptible to picking up any type of infectious disease. There has been shown to be stress-related connections to cancer, herpes, chronic pain, obesity, yeah, obesity, and fat distribution patterns. And this is crazy. You're going to see this in the documentary next week, but um, chronic stress has actually been linked to a fat distribution pattern of carrying more of your excess body fat towards the midsection of your body. So, that's a pretty wild thing. Now, this is considered the number one physical symptom of stress, muscle tension. Okay? So, all of us, whether we're aware of it or not, when we're experiencing stress, we are going to have an increase in muscle tension. And that can be problematic for a number of reasons. But one that's more obvious is increased muscle tension can also lead to pain or an increase in pain. For example, if you carry a lot of muscle tension through the jaw, the face, the neck, you may be more prone to headaches. Okay, and that would only be one reason that a headache could be occurring, but it can increase the likelihood. So I'd like you to begin thinking and identifying what symptoms you may experience, physical symptoms you may experience when you're experiencing chronic stress. Common answers generally end up being headaches, stomach problems, uh, problems with complexion. In other words, more difficulties with acne. It could be just a wide range of things. Low back pain is generally mentioned pretty often. So, think about this one and maybe write this down in your notes. What symptoms do you most notice appearing in your life when you're experiencing stress? Okay, so the general adaptation syndrome. First, I want to give you a heads up. This is not the same as the fight or flight response. And in the past, some students have confused the fight or flight response with the general adaptation syndrome. So, this will be something that I would recommend you spend a little bit of time with. With exam one, there was coverage of the fight or flight response. So hopefully you know those 4 stages. The general adaptation syndrome, really what it is, and I have it highlighted in red here. It's just a three step, very general explanation of how stress and health challenges are related. Okay? So the general adaptation syndrome attempts to explain the relationship between stress and health challenges. And let's go ahead and take a look at what those stages are. So with the general adaptation syndrome, again, there are 3 stages or 3 phases. The first phase is called the alarm phase. Okay. And the first phase here is actually the fight or flight response kicking in. Okay, so let's think about this. The first thing that actually is going to happen is if we experience or if we perceive something to be a threat, our fight or flight response will kick in, and that's the alarm phase. Now, the second phase is called the phase of resistance. And the phase of resistance what's going on in the phase of resistance is it says the continued release of cortisol and epinephrine. Okay, cortisol and epinephrine are stress hormones. So when that fight or flight response kicks in, up here, it's stating this cortisol and epinephrine are being released when that happens. And during the resistance phase, the release is continuing. And the thing is this release will continue it can continue over a long period of time if the stressor becomes chronic. So, in other words, if you're not able to resolve the stressor, if you're not able to develop effective ways to cope with it, you will remain stressed physiologically. Your body will hang on to this more elevated state, this more activated state of being stressed. So the body will continue to release those two stress hormones. And this is where it can get very dangerous because if you have this elevation of cortisol and epinephrine for a long period of time, eventually something gives. And that's the stage of exhaustion where the body can no longer cope with being in this elevated status. So something breaks, something gives, and then what ends up happening is potentially disease or illness. Something what I like to emphasize when I teach this section is we don't really know how long we're able to be in this resistance stage without moving into stage 3 where something breaks. And that could be different for all of us. So, an example that, I always look back on is the years I spent coaching, and I felt highly stressed during those years. And I had a fair number of health complications during the years that I was coaching. But it was at about year 10 or 11 that my body hit exhaustion. And what I ended up developing was something that was on one of these previous slides. I ended up with Epstein-Barr virus, and it was life altering. So, stress is nothing to play around with because, for most of us, we might be able to, resist for a period of time, but eventually something breaks. Okay, now what I'm going to do is link this YouTube video in the lecture module. But I want you to be sure and watch this. This video does a really good job of explaining the general adaptation syndrome, probably much better than I just did. It's also going to help you remember it. So do be sure and watch this video. So, this is a bit of a breakdown and it comes directly from that video. It's basically giving you a bit of detail with regard to what's actually happening inside of your body. And this is during the alarm phase. So during that alarm phase, when the fight or flight kicks in, first of all, the nervous system, well, it's becoming activated and it's going to release a couple of stress hormones, epinephrine. Epinephrine is also called adrenaline. Most of us have heard the term adrenaline. Maybe some of us have heard of epinephrine. Also, norepinephrine is being released. Okay. Also, hormones. Now, this is the endocrine system. So, hormones are secreted by the brain's pituitary. The pituitary is our master gland, and our hypothalamus glands. And these hormones end up being messengers to the body's adrenal glands. Okay. The adrenals, there are two. They sit, they're small glands that sit kind of on the top of your kidneys. Okay, so gosh, I wish I could see you right now. This is really challenging. So anyway, they become messengers, the hormones secreted by the pituitary and hypothalamus to the body's adrenal glands. And then that actually results in the release of more stress hormones. So I'm going to give you a heads up here. Get good at recognizing that adrenaline or epinephrine is a stress hormone and that cortisol is a stress hormone. Okay, so epinephrine and cortisol are two that I want you to remember. In the documentary next week, you're going to hear this term glucocorticoids quite a lot. Okay, and you could just think of cortisol as being a type of glucocorticoid. So let's just look. I said, hey, remember these two, adrenaline and cortisol. Let's just look at what they're doing to your body. So, this happens inside of you. If you're feeling stressed, if you experience stress, your body, that fight or flight's kicking in, and that is the alarm phase here. And so adrenaline and cortisol are both being released. And what adrenaline is actually doing is it's doing things like increasing your heart rate, your blood pressure, your respiration. It's helping with an increase in strength. It's increasing sugar from the liver to produce fuel for the muscles. Keep in mind, this response, it's it's something that we're born with, and also it's a response that helps us survive um, a real life threatening type of situation. We're wired this way. And so this is all going to be really helpful if we're having to run from danger or if we're having to fight. But this also is happening maybe these days when we watch the news about the coronavirus. Okay. Now this second stress hormone, cortisol, the reason that it is being released is it helps reduce pain and inflammation. Okay, and that could be an important part of survival. It's also decreasing our immune response. There are more important things to be doing in a crisis or an emergency. Okay, and I think in looking at this, you may begin to see some of the problems. So, if this fight or flight is kicking in with us and it's staying on, if we're caught up in that resistance phase for a longer period of time, our immune response is going to be decreased. Cortisol actually kills white blood cells, and white blood cells fight infection. So, pretty timely information here. Right now, with everything we're going through, being able to manage stress, doing those relaxation techniques to help bring your body back into homeostasis or physiological calm. This is a really important part of taking care of yourself right now. Okay, don't get too excited about all of this or too nervous about it all. Definitely don't get stressed about this. Um, these systems of the body, you're not going to need to memorize them, regurgitate them, anything. I just wanted you to see these are the different systems of your body. And, if we end up with some type of a health condition affecting one of our systems of the body, we can end up having other systems all affected or other systems affected as well. So, it says if we have a problem with one system, eventually the others will be affected. So, our body is as a whole is a system that's very interconnected and it's a cooperative system. So, if one system is kind of going awry or going off course, the others can also be affected. So some stress-related disorders, how they typically get categorized as nervous system related or immune system related. And what I have listed here are just some examples of what is considered a nervous system related disorder and what is considered an immune system related disorder. And we've got the tension and migraine headaches here. TMJD is the condition, it's the teeth grinding. Um, a lot of times, people who have problems with this, they experience the problems at night. They grind their teeth in their night. Maybe some of you in class actually have this. I usually have one or two students in class who have TMJD and have been prescribed a mouth guard to wear at night. Bronchial asthma is considered nervous system related. IBS, that's irritable bowel syndrome, and CHD is coronary heart disease. Okay, and then if we come on over here to immune system related, and again, these are stress related disorders. We've got the common cold and influenza. Okay, so we're talking about here viruses. Okay, allergies, that's considered immune system related, and allergies is something that, at least in my experience, seems to be more prevalent in California than a lot of other places, than the other places that I've lived. Rheumatoid arthritis, ulcers, colitis, and cancer. Okay, so again, stress-related disorders, we categorize them as nervous system related or immune system related, and you have some examples here. Okay, so what I have created for you is these would have been your PowerPoint questions. And, I'll just run through these real quick. What is the number one symptom of stress? And you can think on your own about this, but I will tell you the number one symptom of stress is muscle tension. Which of the following is true of the general adaptation syndrome? A, it explains how the brain interprets stress. B, it explains the relationship between stress and health challenges. Or C, it explains how the body returns to homeostasis. Okay, so here's the answer. It explains the relationship between stress and health challenges. Okay, and again, you have these questions in the PowerPoint that's provided on Canvas. So I'm just imagining some of you right now pulling out your cameras or pulling out your phones and taking pictures of these. You can if you want, but you also have this in your PowerPoint. In which stage of the general adaptation syndrome does the fight or flight response occur? Okay, and that fight or flight response is going to occur in that first stage or first phase, the alarm phase. During the resistance phase of the general adaptation syndrome, which of the following occur? A, the continued release of stress hormones. B, the fight or flight response. Or C, the failure of a system of the body. Okay, continued release of the stress hormones. Which stress hormone increases blood pressure and heart rate? So there's one up here that is not a stress hormone. Okay, the one that is not a stress hormone is estrogen. Okay, so hopefully you weren't thinking estrogen. Cortisol and epinephrine, those are the two that I want you guys to really clue into. And epinephrine is correct. Epinephrine just kind of turns everything up. Cortisol tends to suppress things. So epinephrine has that turning up, like increasing effect. Which stress hormone suppresses the immune system? And yeah, cortisol. All right. This is the symbol for we're done. And oh my gosh, I'm looking at the timer. That was 30 minutes. So I hope you were able to hang in there for this 30 minutes. Remember to view that YouTube that I've linked. Also, remember you have access to this PowerPoint presentation. It's linked in this module as well. And hope you guys are having a really good day. It's Friday morning right now, March 20th, and I think I'm going to take a nap. Okay, I will talk to you later. Take care.